Here with Jason Bay. He's the co-founder and chief revenue officer at Blissful Prospecting, which just saying the words Blissful Prospecting kind of puts me at ease, which is something I think we could all use right now. Jason, welcome to the show.
It's good to be on, man. We met at an MSP event and got to chat a little bit. And we've been able to talk a couple times since then. So I'm excited to chat, man.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Thanks for being here. So Jason, why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then we'll kind of snowball from there.
Yeah, so I run a company called Blissful Prospecting with my wife, Sarah. And what I like to say is we help sales teams think outside the script. So instead of going to that talk track and writing that canned email, what is the best way to get the attention of someone that doesn't know who you are or what your company is? And that's where we can come in and help. We do trainings, workshops, we have an online community, like all kinds of different ways that we help people with that.
Yeah. So speaking of thinking outside the script, I think right now is the best time to talk about that because salespeople are experiencing something that most have never experienced before. So, tell us a little bit about what you're hearing from your clients or recommendations you're giving your clients around messaging when it comes to, LinkedIn messages or emails.
Yeah. So if you're on LinkedIn and consuming content on this, you're probably hearing a lot of people and seeing a lot of people say you need to have empathy, or I don't want to be tone deaf. And I think that's really, really good. If you're thinking about that, you're already a step ahead of people that are just operating business as normal, right? Business as usual. So I think you talk about what empathy is and what empathy isn't. So there seems to be some confusion in sales around empathy because I saw a sales leader, very prominent sales leader several months ago, write an article that basically said that empathy, like he was questioning whether or not empathy was required in sales. Mm-hmm. But he thought empathy was, well, if the prospect is feeling, really bummed out or, really frustrated, that doesn't mean you should feel frustrated. And I'm like, dude, that's not empathy. That's what an empath does, right? Empathy is just the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes and just to think about what life is like for them right now.
Right.
So that's the very first thing that you should do is not think I need to have more empathy. Think, well, what's going on in my prospect's world right now? And that's changed a lot in the last month or two. And where I would start is thinking about, and you can do this by talking to your current customers. And that's where I would start is what's going on in their world? How have their priorities shifted? And then what are the challenges that are standing in the way of them accomplishing those priorities? Right. And then find a way to be helpful in those areas. So if it's prospecting that we're helping people with, it's how can I put together resources to help people adjust their messaging or the approach that they should take, or interviewing other people that are having success right now with prospecting and sharing those, or helping our clients get results and then packaging that up into an insight. So that would be the very first thing before we even write an email or build a talk track or send a LinkedIn message is what's going on in my prospects world? Like what are their challenges? How has that changed? And then how can I actually be helpful? And being helpful doesn't mean you just say my product and service is really well positioned right now to help your company. It's I'm working with a lot of other people like you, and here's what they're doing right now to that's in line with this priority or to overcome this challenge. Is it cool if I send that resource over to you?
Right.
That's the approach that I see working really well right now. And it was the approach that was working really well prior to this too. I think you just need to do more of it right now than maybe you're used to.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up because being helpful doesn't just mean, hey, my solution can solve all your problems right now. I mean, it might, right? I mean, there probably are salespeople out there that are selling a solution that could actually help right now. But, understanding that even if your product is perfect for them, if budgets are frozen, if hiring is frozen, if they're experiencing layoffs and shifts within the organization, they're not going to be in a position to buy right now, even if your product is perfect for them. So, right, being helpful, finding ways to nurture them, through a process that will be longer than what you're used to. With empathy, I think there's a lot about tone that goes into that, which is easy to convey over a phone call. But what's some advice you would have for salespeople that are trying to convey empathy over text that they can't do over the phone?
Yeah, that's a really tough one because most of us, including myself, are not like world-class copywriters. I wouldn't consider myself a world-class copywriter. So that's the good thing though is if you're in sales, you're not a marketer. So it doesn't need to be perfect. Erring on the side of conversational is always best. So the basic framework for a great message is just starting with empathy. So an acknowledgement of the person's situation and what they're thinking, and then following in with a result. So what can you help them with, or what does this resource help with? So when you're starting out an email, the thing that you don't want to do is say, hey, Jason, my name is Bob. I work at this company and here's what we do. That is not a good way to start an email. Really exercise some common sense. If you're meeting someone for the first time, what's going to really engage someone is, hey, what brought you to this event, right? Or, hey, what do you do? Or, hey, I'm meeting a lot of people right now and they're telling me that this is top of mind for them. What's top of mind for you? Like that kind of stuff. So my advice would be, one, to talk it out verbally, like what you're going to say. If you already have a talk track built and you're good at cold calling, this should be pretty easy. You kind of want to just transcribe what you would say out loud. So instead of writing to a template, so this would be the second tip, and instead of writing a sequence out and like writing an email template, I would write an email to an actual prospect. So open up their LinkedIn profile, write it to them, and then take that customized email, then turn that into a template. And it's really the language around making it conversational that's going to help translate that with that empathy that we're talking about.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because, a lot of salespeople like to stick to that templated type of format. But you're right. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be perfect, and it can be conversational. And I think that's kind of where things are shifting towards right now. Great. So, let's talk a little bit about, I read this, you posted, I don't know if it's called a blog on LinkedIn, but you posted your own content, original content all around the psychology of everything that's happening, the psychology of the prospects. Can you talk a little bit about that? And we'll be sure to put a link to that in the show notes. But yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not a psychologist, but I've been to a lot of therapy. So this has sort of been through my personal journey of primarily couples therapy. I've always wanted to go to therapy, but my wife had been going to therapy before we met, and she had gone through it, and I'd always just been curious about it. So we go to couples therapy, not because our marriage is like falling apart or anything. It's like, how can we best get along together? Because we work together and we work from home together, even prior to COVID-19. So we have to get along. You know what I mean? So I'm naturally thinking about like, what's the psychology? Like, what are people thinking and experiencing? And most importantly, what are they feeling right now? So that would be the very first step. And from a psychology standpoint, there's two or three like really main things that you can think about. One is catastrophizing. So catastrophizing is essentially in your head, making a situation out to be way worse than it actually is in reality. So for example, when all of this stuff went down, the first thing I thought was, are people going to need sales trainers? Is my, like they're getting rid of people, rather they're laying, like, why would they ever need someone to help them? I'm catastrophizing. Yeah, business is tougher right now than it was, but where I went to in my head was 10 times worse than it actually is. So know that your prospects are experiencing that. And you might be experiencing that too, but use that as a way to like, hey, I get that this is a concern of yours. I think it's really smart that you're thinking about that. Like, you should be validating how people feel, how your prospects feel. So if someone's like, hey, the budget's on lock right now, we're really, you're worried about spending money on something that might not have an ROI. Hey, I totally understand, man, where you're coming from. I'd probably do the same exact thing in your situation. And I was calling you because I was hoping that you would say that. And then you kind of go into your thing there. So catastrophizing is a really big thing that you're going to see. The second thing is what's called loss aversion. So loss aversion is essentially someone's tendency to prefer avoiding loss over an equal amount of gain. So they've done these really interesting studies in psychology where people prefer to save or hold on to $50, let's say, and doing everything they can not to lose that versus something that's a gamble that could win $50 that doesn't really have a drawback, in going and approaching that, right? Or going after that. So loss aversion comes in right now where people are protecting. So in your language, what I've noticed when I talk to directors and VPs of sales right now is they say things like, we're trying to boost morale. We're trying to save pipeline. We already know we're not going to hit our quarterly target, but I don't want to lose any more pipeline because I don't want to lose any more. I don't want to have to lay off anyone. So they're talking in those terms versus like, oh, I want to blow it up and our goal is to 3x our revenue from last, you know what I mean? Like, that's not really been the conversation lately.
Yeah.
So loss aversion is really, really important. And the last one I would talk about is what's called bandwagon bias. And bandwagon bias is, if you follow sports, you've heard those bandwagon, it's a bandwagon Golden State Warriors fans, right? You saw a lot of those in the last couple of years. But it's essentially a person's tendency to follow their peers. So this works in both ways, though. So your prospect might be seeing other businesses and other people like them freaking out right now, and that's bad. So they might freak out, but it also works the other way. So if you can say things like, hey, I'm talking to a lot of people like you that are VPs of sales, and what they're telling me is that they're concerned about this, but here's what they're doing to fix that. Here's how they're remaining calm, or here's how they're being a good leader for their team right now and boosting morale. Like the bandwagon effect, a bias also works in the other way too. So you can get it to work in a positive way.
Yeah.
But those are the things that I would be thinking about right now that can really help you get in the shoes of the prospect and think about what life is like for them right now. And that's going to dictate your messaging. That's how you can have empathy.
You sure you're not a psychologist? You fooled me. But that's where you're good at sales, I guess, right?
So tell me about your childhood, Nimit.
Yeah. Fortunately, this is only about a 10-minute program. Yeah, maybe another time. Maybe another time. I'll lay down on the couch or something. And we can have it.
Yeah.
But no, Jason, that's all really good stuff. I really appreciate you sharing that. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so I put together a link for you guys. It's blissfulprospecting.com/Nimit. And what you can find there is just like a quick guide for something we put together called the reply method. And that's a framework that you can use for your emails and your calls. So if you want to apply some of the psychology that we talked about and actually put it into words, into an email, I'd recommend checking that out. It's a free guide. It's on a one-page cheat sheet, and you can use it the next time you go to write a cold email or adjust your talk tracks.
Jason, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. So again, that's blissfulprospecting.com/Nimit. And we'll also put a link to the article he put on LinkedIn all about the psychology in the show notes. So again, Jason, thanks so much for being here.
Cool. Thanks, man.